What if everything you know is wrong?
Hey everyone, we talk a lot about social connection being good for our happiness, right? But what if it's just as vital for the actual physical health of your brain? That's what we're getting into today, a hidden threat to our minds that's tied directly to how we connect with others. And look, the stakes couldn't be higher. A huge study back in 2015 found that being socially disconnected is as dangerous to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Just let that sink in. 15 cigarettes. That's not just some interesting factoid. That's a massive, flashing red light for public health. And it immediately brings up a really critical question. So, what is the real danger here? Is it about literally being alone, or is it about feeling alone? You might think, hey, same difference, right? But it turns out scientists now see them as two totally different things. And believe me, they have very different consequences for your brain. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll get our definitions straight. What's the difference between being alone and feeling lonely? Then we'll look at the evidence for both. We'll see how time plays a huge role. And finally, we'll wrap up with why this distinction is so important. All right, let's dive into section 1, alone versus feeling lonely. We're going to define our key suspects in this whole brain health mystery. For a long time, these two ideas were just all jumbled up together. But the latest science is pulling them apart, and understanding that difference is really the key to the whole thing. So let's start with social isolation. The easiest way to think about this is that it's objective. It's the hard facts of your social life that you could actually count. How many friends do you see in a week? Do you live by yourself? Are you part of any clubs? It's all about quantity, a factual state of being. But loneliness, that's a whole different ballgame. It is completely subjective. It's an internal feeling. It's that painful gap between the connections you wish you had and the ones you actually have. This is all about quality. You could be in the middle of a party surrounded by people and feel crushing loneliness if those connections don't feel meaningful to you. So here's the bottom line, right? Social isolation is about a lack of people. Loneliness is an internal feeling. You can be isolated but perfectly happy in your solitude, and you can be surrounded by people and feel totally lonely. And the science backs this up. They only have a pretty modest correlation, which just proves they are separate issues we need to tackle differently. Okay, so now that we've got our terms straight, let's move on. Let's look at the threat of isolation. What does the hard evidence say about what this objective state of being does to our brains over time? And wow, the evidence here is it's overwhelming. A big review looked at all the major long-term studies, and the result was unanimous. 6 out of 6 studies found a strong, undeniable link between social isolation and cognitive decline. I mean, you just don't get much clearer than that in science. The evidence is airtight. And this isn't just some vague, fuzzy effect either. The research points to specific areas that take a hit. We're talking about declines in memory, the speed at which we process things, our verbal skills, basically our overall cognitive function. It's like a full frontal assault on our mental sharpness. So why? Why does this happen? Well, the leading theory is something you've probably heard of, the use it or lose it hypothesis. Think about it. Social interaction is a serious workout for your brain, right? You're decoding language, reading nonverbal cues, pulling up memories, coming up with replies, all in real time. If you don't get that regular mental exercise, those cognitive muscles just start to weaken. Okay, so the case against social isolation seems pretty open and shut. But now we turn to loneliness, that subjective feeling. And this is where the story gets a whole lot more complicated. It's a real puzzle. And this chart really shows you what I mean. Unlike that 6 for 6 slam dunk with isolation, the evidence for loneliness is, well, it's all over the place. Out of 9 studies they looked at, only 4 found a clear link to cognitive decline. The others, no link, or a link that only showed up for men, or maybe other things were going on. It's a real scientific head-scratcher. So this mess of data just makes you ask, right? If loneliness isn't directly torpedoing the brain like isolation seems to be, what else is going on here? What's the missing piece of the puzzle? And here it is. This is the key. Multiple studies pointed to depression as this powerful middleman. The path often goes like this. Loneliness makes you much more likely to develop symptoms of depression, and then it's the depression that leads to cognitive decline. So the damage from feeling lonely is often indirect. It travels through the channel of depression. So we've got two different culprits, isolation and loneliness, and they seem to work in different ways. But now, a new wave of research is adding another crucial piece to the puzzle: time. Does it actually matter if you feel this way for a little while or if it becomes a chronic, long-term part of your life? Oh, yeah, it matters. It matters a lot. This study on physical health shows it perfectly. So, compared to people who weren't lonely, those who felt lonely on and off had about a 30% higher risk of developing a physical disability. But look at this. For people who were chronically lonely, feeling that way all the time over 4 years, that risk jumped to almost 60% higher. The duration just cranks the danger dial way up. And get this part is just fascinating. The research shows that chronic isolation and chronic loneliness don't just feel different, they're linked to different ways of dying. Chronic social isolation was tied to a higher risk of death from cancer and respiratory disease, but loneliness, that was specifically linked to death from cardiovascular disease. This is a huge clue that they're setting off completely different harmful chain reactions in our bodies. So, the big takeaway here is what scientists call a dose-response relationship. It's pretty simple, really. The longer your dose of either isolation or loneliness, the more damage it does over time. It's not just what you're feeling, but for how long you've been feeling it. Okay, let's pull all these threads together in our final section. Why does any of this matter? Why go to all the trouble of splitting hairs between alone and lonely or temporary and chronic? Well, it matters in the real world. A lot. So let's just quickly recap what we found. Number 1, isolation and loneliness are two very different problems. Number 2, isolation, the objective lack of people, seems to have a direct, consistent link to cognitive decline. 3, loneliness, the subjective feeling, often does its damage indirectly, usually by leading to depression. And finally, both of these states become way more dangerous when they're chronic, and they even seem to attack our bodies in different ways, leading to different causes of death. And this is why that distinction is so crucial. You can't fix a problem if you don't actually understand it. The solutions have to be different because the problems are different. To fight isolation, you need to focus on objective connections, right? Building community centers, organizing social events. But to fight loneliness, you have to focus on subjective feelings. That means teaching people coping skills or helping them improve the quality of the relationships they already have. And that really leaves us with this big final question, doesn't it? If you're trying to build a healthier society and you have limited time and money, what's the better bet? Do you build more community centers to get people together? Or do you teach them the internal skills to make those connections count? You know, the science we've looked at today suggests we can't really choose. We have to do both.
Understanding begins with why.